Welcome to the Holistic Living Podcast, my beautiful friends. You can expect my uncensored, real, and honest thoughts on a wide variety of health topics. If you love to learn on ways to improve your health, your life, your mindset, your emotions, and everything in between in a natural way, you are in the right place, and I am so excited to have you here. Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Holistic Living Podcast. Today we are talking about hypothyroidism because this is a really common condition that I see among majority of my clients, and whether or not they have an actual diagnosis of the condition or just the symptoms, it's something that is really, really common, and I think it can be of great benefit for us to kind of dive into this condition a little bit. There's so much to explain. Obviously, we can't cover all of it in this short podcast, but I wanted to just give some insights in hopes that you guys will have some more information if you do struggle with an underactive thyroid. So hypothyroidism, not hyper. Hypothyroidism is a condition of decreased thyroid hormone levels, specifically the T3 and T4 hormones. Hypothyroidism can result from the inability of the thyroid gland to produce T4 hormone, or the inability to convert T4 to T3, which is the active form of the thyroid hormone, or both, low T4 and low T3. Some of the causes of low production of T4 hormone are autoimmune thyroiditis with progressive destruction of the thyroid gland, and this can be divided into idiopathic or primary myxedema with a goiter and Hashimoto's thyroiditis that presents with a firm, moderate-sized goiter. There's these autoantibodies that are found, and the gland is infiltrated with inflammatory cells. So the condition is really often associated with autoimmune gastritis and autoimmune Addison's disease. There seems to be a cell-mediated autoimmune reaction to mitochondrial antigens as well as to antibodies. And this is non-organ specific, by the way. That's accounting for these multiple effects. So that's the first potential cause of a low production of T4 hormone. However, there can also be radioactive therapy, a thyroidectomy, so if you've had your thyroid removed. There's also dysharmonogenesis, which is associated with a goiter. It's a congenital absence of some enzyme involved in the formation of the hormone that results in a metabolic failure to produce the T4 hormone. The gland is very enlarged and nodular, and very often there's also an inhibition of exogenous goitrogens and drugs. And there can also be decreased pituitary TSH or hypothalamic TRH secretion. So those are not all, but some of the causes of low T4 hormone production. Some of the causes of low levels of T3 hormone include a selenium deficiency. There could also be iodine deficiency as well, liver dysfunction. This is what I see very commonly, and I'll circle back to this shortly. There can also be adrenal stress and also illness. You want to note as well that there's more than one form of T3 that exists in the body. There's actually free T3, which is the active form, whereas reverse T3 is the inactive form of the hormone produced in times of stress or illness. So you can have T3, reverse T3, free T3. Now, coming back to the liver dysfunction really quickly, a lot of people don't know this, but our liver is actually it does so many different functions, but one of the things that makes it so incredible is that it's a really big endocrine or hormonal gland as well. So all of your different hormones will get released by different glands in the body, but these hormones are inactive or unusable. So they actually go to the liver. It's your liver's job to convert these hormones into a usable form by the body, and then it sends the hormones back out. Your body uses what it needs of this new converted hormone, and then whatever is left over goes back to the liver for excretion. Most of us suffer with liver toxicity these days because of the modern world that we live in. I've talked about this extensively, not just on the podcast, but on my Instagram, on my YouTube channel, on my membership platform, holisticspring.org, and everywhere else. So if you want more information on liver toxicity, you can check any of my channels. But because of this, a lot of people have the thyroid gland producing all the hormones that it needs, but it's not getting converted by the liver. So you're not getting the active form of the hormone that we need. And so because of that, you're going to have symptoms of an underfunctioning thyroid, or it could be adrenals or ovaries or whatever else it might be. So I just want to make a note of that very commonly the hypothyroidism gets cleared up once we do liver drainage or detoxification, and then it can actually function better to convert hormones better. And then your symptoms clear up because you actually have proper thyroid hormones now as a result of supporting the liver. So I just wanted to mention that. Adrenal stress, when I mentioned that can also be a cause of low T3. When we have chronic stress, we put a lot of pressure on the adrenals. If we have chronic anxiety, if we're always in that fight or flight mode, it puts a lot of burden on the adrenals, which can actually really impact our thyroid as well. So it's always something I like to support, and we'll get to that when we get to the supplement portion of the podcast. But having that support for the thyroid really looks like having support for the liver and the adrenals and our stress as well. So what are some of the signs or symptoms of hypothyroidism? Regardless of the cause, the symptoms are very commonly fatigue because you have a slow metabolism. Your body's not able to pull in sugars with the insulin into the cells as quickly as it should be and burning it up for ATP energy. This slows the metabolism down and you get less energy production as a result. But it's also a symptom that we very, very commonly see is mental dullness, brain fog, poor cognition or memory, physical slowness. You just feel so exhausted all the time. You literally move slower. Dry skin, dry hair. This dry skin and hair very often is an MTHFR deficiency that we also see with hypothyroid individuals. And a big part of this is that beta carotene doesn't get converted to vitamin A. And this is usually an MTHFR issue because when you have MTHFR, the certain genetic SNPs, you can't convert beta carotene into vitamin A. So you can be eating all of those healthy orange foods like sweet potato and carrots and think you're going to get a lot of vitamin A when in fact you're not, and should be supplementing with retinol directly. Another symptom is inability to tolerate the cold. There's muscle weakness and cramps, orange coloration of the skin, especially the palms, yellow bumps on the eyelids due to fat deposition. This is usually from cholesterol, recurring infections, depression, weight gain, and so much more. There's a lot more to it. So you guys can find full list of thyroid symptoms if you want to just do even a quick Google search, but for lack of time, I'm just going to move on to the pathophysiology of this condition. So the condition covers a spectrum from mild subclinical hypothyroidism to clinical hypothyroidism to the severe condition called myoexedema, and the symptoms will also vary from mild to severe. If you have subclinical hypothyroidism, this refers to the exhibition of the hypothyroidism despite your blood levels coming back normal. So this is where I mentioned that I will have clients come see me. They have all of the symptoms of hypothyroidism, but they say that their hormone levels were normal. Now, one thing I will say as well is take it with a grain of salt because a lot of doctors will not perform the full thyroid panel where they're looking at your reverse and free T3 and T4 and your TSH. They're just sometimes will test TSH or your T3 and T4 and that's it. And if those come back normal, they say you're fine. But if the other hormones are out of balance, then that will tell us a lot as well. So provided you had the full panel and your full panel came back as normal, if you have a lot of the symptoms that point to hypothyroidism, you can be in what we call the subclinical hypothyroidism category, which is where most people are. Mild hypothyroidism may not be evidenced by your thyroid hormone blood test, but it can be picked up on the Barnes basal body temperature test. So I love this test personally. In this test, the body temperature is taken every morning before rising, just like if you were tracking your fertility, you would be doing this with a basal body thermometer. You put the thermometer under your tongue and then you do not do anything. You sit still for about 10 minutes. A body temperature consistently below 36.5 degrees Celsius indicates a lower level of thyroid activity. In women, this should be done from the 1st to the 10th day of your menstrual cycle. So if you are doing this for the first 10 days of your cycle and you consistently get a basal body temperature under 36.5 degrees Celsius, which is 97.6 degrees Fahrenheit, that could indicate that you have a lower level of thyroid activity. This is why women who have, or men who have hypothyroidism very commonly feel cold all the time. Their hands and feet are cold. Their extremities, like the tip of their nose or your glutes, will be cold. And this is usually lower thyroid activity levels. Subclinical hypothyroidism is really common, and many factors can be involved, including chronic stress. The chronic stress channels tyrosine into norepinephrine and epinephrine synthesis and away from T3 and T4 production. Histamines and kinines released in inflammation can also stimulate epinephrine release. So if you have chronic inflammation, it can have the same effect as well. There may be a nutrient deficiency, especially if iodine, selenium, essential fatty acids, manganese, zinc, iron, magnesium, or vitamins A, C, B2, B3, B6, B12, and E. You can also have heavy metal accumulation, especially mercury, which is associated with candida very commonly, and also lead toxicity. This crowds iodine out of the thyroid. So these heavy metals will kind of take over around the thyroid, which will pull iodine out. And chemical pollutants like PCBs and pesticides and plastics can also mimic our natural thyroid hormone and block receptors on cells for a thyroid hormone. Also, autointoxication from dysbiosis commonly affects the thyroid. A toxic system in general can also be the result of a poor diet, chronic constipation, and liver overload. So overeating can congest the liver and overload it, preventing it from detoxifying. And the liver has so many metabolic functions, including making fuels available for energy production. So a sluggish or toxic liver may in fact be the root cause of a low or sluggish metabolism, and cleansing the liver may be all that is needed to reboost your metabolic rate. Free radical damage can also be a cause, and or low antioxidant intake. A lot of us are eating the standard American diet, and we're having very little antioxidants and superfoods, and so this can also be a trigger. Low selenium levels, I mentioned this earlier. Selenium is needed to convert T4 to T3, the more active form of the hormone, and may play a minor role in the manufacture of thyroid hormones as well. Also, yo-yo dieting or extreme intermittent fasting, this can slow down the metabolic rate and changes at the body This can slow the metabolic rate and changes the body composition to one of relatively low lean body mass. And as the metabolic rate is dependent on muscle mass, the metabolic rate will fall. So insulin resistance can cause suppressed thyroid hormone levels as well. Anyone with PCOS or pre-diabetes will have to, watch their thyroid. Goitrogens like thiocyanate and thioglucosides found in the cruciferous vegetables will interfere with the production of thyroid hormone by the thyroid gland. If you cook your cruciferous vegetables, it'll destroy these goitrogens, so they'll be easier to enjoy these foods without having the negative side effects on the thyroid. So to say that last point again, because I know a lot of you will be surprised with this one, if you are having raw cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, kale, cabbage, etc., and in the raw form, there will be goitrogens like thiocyanate and thioglucosides that will interfere with the production of thyroid hormone. So if you cook the vegetable, it'll destroy those goitrogens and you'll have no issues there. Too much iodide suppresses the thyroid and inhibits iodination of tyrosine. Iodide is found in expectorants used for asthma and chronic bronchitis. It is also an iodized salt. This is always why I'm saying ditch the table salt and go for sea salt. The table salt, they remove everything that's good in it and then they re-iodize it, but they iodize it with iodide. So that's something that we don't want. Also, the last, there's many more, but one of the last main common factors involved in subclinical hypothyroidism are drugs, especially the para-aminosalicylic acid and a bunch of other types of drugs will inhibit hormone synthesis. Now, the lack of thyroid hormone has many physiological effects, some of which can be compensated for nutritionally. A person with low levels of thyroid hormone very commonly can have an underactive stomach, which we call hypochlorhydria. Thyroid hormone is required for HCl production. So if you have an underactive thyroid, you're not going to have enough stomach acid production. And if you don't have enough stomach acid production, you're going to have an underactive thyroid more so. Also, a person with low levels of thyroid hormone are unable to convert beta carotene to vitamin A. This is also the same case for MTHFR, so you'll need to supplement with retinol separately or eat foods really high directly in vitamin A. They'll typically have an iron deficiency, especially because low HCl levels will result in malabsorption of minerals, including iron. And you'll have mineral deficiencies, including calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper, etc. Very commonly, there'll be a B12 deficiency. And people with hypothyroidism are also at risk for osteoporosis and are prone to insulin resistance and are at risk for diabetes and can have total high cholesterol, as the thyroid hormone is required to remove cholesterol from the blood, and you can also experience constipation. These are the classic signs, guys. When I see clients, they always have the underactive thyroid symptoms. They always come to me with an underactive stomach. There's always dry skin, dry hair falling out, adrenal imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, very commonly that insulin resistance, and of course, constipation and high cholesterol. So it's like that perfect symptom profile when I see someone come in and I'm like, you need some thyroid support for sure. So both aspects of hypothyroidism, that is low T4 and low T3, need to be considered. For low T4, you have low T4 hormone. This indicates a dysfunction of the thyroid gland to produce the hormone. The first consideration must be given to the availability of nutrients required to assemble T4, specifically tyrosine and iodine. An inadequate supply of these nutrients will obviously inhibit the thyroid's ability to produce the T4 hormone. In respect to low T3, if you have low levels of T3 with normal levels of T4 hormone, this denotes poor conversion of T4 to T3, which points to a non-thyroid cause, such as selenium deficiency, adrenal stress, and or liver dysfunction. Conversion of T4 to T3 can take place in most cells in the body, but most predominantly occurs in the liver. So optimal liver function is essential to the production of adequate T3. T4 loses an iodine molecule in its conversion to T3, with selenium being the coenzyme that drives the reaction. Stress and illness in the body cause redirection of the conversion, and reverse T3 is created in place of free T3. So that's important to note. So myxedema usually develops insidiously, and in this condition, mucoproteins accumulate in the dermal connective tissue, causing coarsening of features and non-pitting edema. They can also be deposited around nerves, impairing peripheral nerve function, and cause carpal tunnel syndrome and deafness. The same deposition in the tongue and larynx causes a slurred, hoarse voice. There is very commonly weight gain in spite of poor appetite and a slow pulse. So what I actually always see in my practice is a very low pulse when someone has hypothyroidism. There's very often constipation and, like I mentioned earlier, cold extremities, and cholesterol is raised due to reduced excretion through the liver. Libido is very commonly low, and then you'll have excessive menstrual flow very commonly, so a heavy cycle, and this occurs due to a failure to ovulate, and so a prolonged proliferation of the endometrium. It can lead to eventual coma with profound hypothermia, potentially. So diagnosing hypothyroidism, given that hypothyroidism can be due to low levels of T4, T3, or both, accurate diagnosing through blood work requires examination of both T4 and T3 serum levels in addition to TSH levels. Some provincial health plans, such as Ontario, only support serum TSH testing for routine screening of the thyroid. And so a lot of times doctors will just send you for TSH without looking at the full picture. This practice causes many cases of hypothyroidism to go undiagnosed, especially those involving normal T4 levels but inadequate free T3 levels. Additionally, many medical practitioners are arguing that normal reference ranges for TSH are too great, and that many who fall within the normal ranges are actually in a hypothyroid state. Reference ranges vary by medical labs, and some have begun narrowing their reference ranges. In general, many believe that an ideal serum TSH level should be below 2. If you have high TSH, it indicates an underactive thyroid, whereas many lab references still indicate an upper limit of 5 for your TSH. So it really depends. I think the more sensitive we are on our tests, the better, because if we're not super sensitive, a lot of cases will go undiagnosed. So what are the recommendations for hypothyroidism? We'll start with diet. I always say avoid caffeine. So coffee, tea, if you want to have a little bit of matcha, that would be fine, but stimulants and carbonated beverages should be avoided, as well as sugar, alcohol, MSG, artificial sweeteners, including sugar alcohols. You want to get lots of complete good quality protein and increase your consumption of iodine-containing foods. You can use kelp in place of table salt. My favorite is using a kelp salt. It tastes delicious and you're going to have that extra iodine in it. You also want to avoid soy and raw goitrogenic vegetables, so avoid the raw cruciferous and soy. Goitrogens are naturally occurring substances, like I mentioned earlier, that are found in foods that block the absorption and utilization of iodine. So any vegetables from the mustard family or brassica family will have that. So Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, heat will destroy their action. So as long as they're cooked, you're fine. Now, soy foods are also goitrogenic, but discrepancy does exist over whether the fermented form is goitrogenic. So it's advisable to avoid all forms of soy. If you want to do like a little bit of a fermented soy, you might be okay. But I typically like to just try to minimize the consumption of that in general. You also want to consume organic foods as much as possible. Be careful though, because some pesticides can interfere with iodine uptake by the thyroid. So I know it's not always feasible to buy organic, but just do the best you can. Avoid table salt and just stick to like sea salt or something like that. You want to avoid fluoride and chlorine as they can interfere with iodine absorption, uptake, and utilization. Sources of fluoride include tap water, pesticides on non-organic foods, and toothpaste and dental care products. And chlorine is also abundant in tap water and appears to be highly absorbed through the skin from exposure to hot water, like the shower or swimming pools, things like that. You want to avoid commercial fruit drinks, many of which contain brominated oils that can damage the thyroid, heart, kidneys, and testes, and also avoid foods that one is sensitive to. So if you know you have food allergies or sensitivities, don't eat them anyway and deal with the symptoms. You want to avoid them as higher inflammation will reduce your thyroid hormone conversion. You want to have coconut oil, drink lots of pure water, increase your flax and chia seed and psyllium husk intake. Avoid trans and hydrogenated fats. You want to decrease refined and simple carbs, eat a very alkaline diet, and increase your dark green leafy vegetables and other chlorophyll-rich foods. In terms of supplements, you want to do probiotics. This is always a step one. You want to do iodine or kelp. Caution though, excess iodine can induce hypothyroidism as well. So you don't want to exceed 450 micrograms of iodine per day. You want high quality protein powder, tyrosine, which is very depleted by physical and mental stress as it is used for epinephrine formation. You want to do selenium, B complex, magnesium and calcium, iron. It's very common to have an iron deficiency if you're hypothyroid. And hypothyroid medication can also deplete iron. So if you're on a medication for your hypothyroidism, you definitely will need to supplement with iron. Also vitamin A, chromium, zinc, copper, and manganese should be supplemented very commonly. You want to take hydrochloric acid for the stomach, especially if you're underactive, and some fish oil. In regards to some lifestyle and other factors, you want to address the possible underlying causes that we've talked about already through this podcast. I would recommend also using a chlorine filter for your shower. You want to avoid fluorinated dental care products as much as possible. Get ample, regular, good quality sleep. So focus on sleeping within your circadian rhythm window. Maintain consistent and frequent exercise and also include some meditative forms. Exercise increases thyroid hormone levels and therefore is essential for hypothyroidism. Daily rigorous exercise can actually mask or compensate a hypothyroid condition, so much that if exercise is skipped for a day or two, thyroid hormone and consequently energy levels drop significantly. So this might make you feel more tired. And I know when you're feeling super tired, it can be hard to get yourself to exercise, but you've got to push through. Once you start, you'll feel more energized. I say this all the time when I'm sharing my workouts on Instagram. I'm like, if I skip a day, I feel so exhausted. And it's the truth. When you actually go to the gym, you will have so much more energy, or even just doing a walk around your block. So get yourself to do that, push it through. It'll start to boost your energy and support your thyroid. Athletes with hypothyroidism, however, have reduced exercise tolerance because they're less able to mobilize fat stores for muscle energy during aerobic exercise. So they need to rely more on glycogen conversion to glucose, which decreases the time available to exercise before exhaustion sets in. So I thought that's important to know. It's interesting for sure. You also want to reduce stress and practice stress management techniques. Definitely address dysbiosis, or very commonly is overgrowth, which will make everything worse. As we mentioned earlier, the toxins as well can burden the thyroid. You want to do good liver detoxification and support. You can wear warming socks, which will help improve circulation. You can also apply alternating hot and cold compresses to the thyroid. Obtain plenty of safe exposure to sunlight. Avoid exposure to cigarette smoke and other pollutants, and be really careful to avoid drinking out of plastic bottles, to avoid drinking tap water. You want to make sure you're doing like the makeup and the skincare products and the detergents and the products you're using in your home are not toxic. Get rid of any scented candles or fragrances. These are all endocrine disruptors. They're all going to affect how your body produces thyroid hormone or converts it. And also be really careful with overdoing the high mercury fish as well. A couple botanicals that I love to use with my supplements would be fucus, which is spelled Fucus. I love bayberry. Black cohosh is great, and golden seal as well. These all will assist the thyroid. You could also do ashwagandha and maca to include some thyroid adrenal support. I also love medicinal mushrooms like chaga. And then, of course, you have the homeopathics. You can't go wrong with organotherapy for the thyroid. I think it's amazing because it helps stimulate, and it's also really gentle and pretty much safe for everybody. So those are some of the things that I like to incorporate for my clients with an underactive thyroid. I know there was a lot of information in this podcast that I kind of went through very quickly, just for, time saving. I didn't want to extend it too long, so I kind of went through the information quick, but feel free to re-listen to this and also share this podcast with your friends or family, especially the females in your life who might be struggling with their metabolism or with their energy levels, with their hormones in general. If you know someone that has PCOS or, some kind of like ovulatory issues, they might really want to look into their thyroid, as it can affect fertility and so many other things. So definitely share this podcast. And one last thing I want to leave you with before I go is really quickly that there is a massive, massive discount currently until February 1st of 2024, a massive discount on my gut reset. We're doing a 50% off discount, which is the biggest we've ever done. It's even bigger than our New Year discount that we did last month. The reason why we're doing a huge discount is because we understand that there are a lot of expenses and costs around this time of year, and with inflation, it can be really hard to be able to afford anything else, and we don't want that cost to hinder you from supporting your health. So for a few days, there's going to be this 50% off discount. If you click the link in the description of this podcast, the 60daygutreset.com, you can use the code GUTRESET50 at checkout and save 50% off the program. It will never be this cheap again. It is just to give some support for those who are a little bit struggling this time of year financially, because we understand and still want to have a good gut detox, alkalize the body, improve whole body inflammation, and so much more. This program is packed with knowledge and information. It's a 10-week program. It's self-paced, but it's also guided at the same time. I'm so excited for you to check it out and see if it'll be a good fit for you. We've had amazing feedback the first time that we ran the program, and I'm really excited about it. It's something that I poured my heart and soul into creating, and I think it's the perfect way to start. If you don't have a super healthy lifestyle just yet and you want to start easing yourself into making some healthy lifestyle changes and some supplement changes without overburdening yourself, it's the perfect way to do that and transition into a healthier lifestyle. So I would love for you to check it out. It's 60daygutreset.com. You can take advantage of the discount code until February 1st to start supporting your health. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning into this podcast. I hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you are listening from, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.